Hey everyone, this is Thomas, aka Mr. Mulatto, back with a new book on the list. And this one I assume is on Dr. Jordan Peterson's book list because it's one he wrote. We Who Wrestle with God came out last November, and I've been reading and writing a lot about it, trying to get down to what I think is the essence. So, what Dr. Peterson attempts to do is describe the spirit or essence of God in each of the major Old Testament stories, and then ties it into psychological truths and also into practical applications. So I'll start out by going through each chapter with a succinct description of that essence, and then focus on one of those ideas and how it can be seen practically. Then I'll conclude with some closing thoughts and on the total entirety of the book. So here we go. So these are the major sections in order with a description of the spirit or essence of God in each. I like to use the word essence, as spirit may conjure up thoughts of the supernatural and throw some people off. Essence is much less, I guess, contentious, or you could even use moral or posture, as each idea provides us with a general posture with which to approach the world. Okay, so chapter one, in the beginning. The spirit or essence of God is something that sees potential and transforms it into order. Chapter 2, Adam, Eve, pride, self consciousness, and the fall. The spirit that warns against overreach, against the cardinal sin of pride. In chapter 3, Cain, Abel, and sacrifice. God is a spirit to which we should focus our maximum sacrifice. Chapter 4, Noah, God as the call to prepare. God in the story of Noah is the spirit or essence that calls us to prepare for what is to come. It puts the responsibility squarely on us as individuals to pay attention and be truthful towards that still small voice that tells us when the storms are coming, and to sacrifice the whims of the present in order to work towards being prepared. Chapter 5, the Tower of Babel, God versus tyranny and pride. In this chapter, God is the story of the transcendent being who is the absolute antithesis of presumptuous authority. So God is the being who eternally warns us, do not replace me with the worship of your own pride and power, because all hell is bound to break loose if you do that. Bad idea. In chapter 6, which is Abraham, God is a spirited call to adventure. God is the voice of inspired adventure. Get up, get out, and do something. Get out of your comfort zone. In chapter 7, Moses 1, God as the dreadful spirit of freedom. God is the essence of the call to seek out responsibility. And you do that by throwing off the chains of tyranny that are imposed on us by others and by ourselves, sometimes on ourselves. And also that freedom and responsibility go hand in hand. In chapter 8, Moses 2, hedonism and infantile temptation, essentially saying stay on the right, stay on the straight and narrow, or else your society will be threatened by the loud minority, and the tyranny of authoritarianism will be called forth to stop it. In chapter 9, the last one, Jonah and the eternal abyss, the story of Jonah really represents the spirit or essence of God as the voice of consciousness that calls us to faithfully speak the truth, even in the face of overwhelming urges not to do so. Okay, so those are all the spirits or essences or postures with which to understand and approach the world as described by those Old Testament stories. So now I'll get into just one in a description of it. So I'll go with in the beginning because I think it ties into every following story, which was also fascinating to see. So nothing in those stories is incoherent. All of those lessons that come from the beginning tie into everything else. So here we go. So from the Bible, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Genesis chapter 1, that's verses 1 and 2, right from the beginning. So really the spirit or essence of God is something that sees potential and transforms it into order. Quoting Dr. Peterson, God is what has encountered us when new possibilities emerge and take shape. So the darkness and fluidity of that water is seen as unknown potential, and he transforms that unrealized potential into a type of order. And potential is the key word to understand here, and it's has really completely transformed how I think of humanity as a whole. And this is also the thing that later differentiates humans as being made in the image of God. So, for example, in my garden, I often plant lettuce, and I have a tightly secured, fenced in area around everything because I have tons of rabbits in my yard. Now, these rabbits will destroy the sprouts as soon as their little green heads pop up. Now, it's really annoying, but rabbits, unlike humans, have no concept of potential or time itself. So I know that it would be a waste for me to munch on those tasty little sprouts, because if I wait just a week or two, it will give me a massive abundance of lettuce that I can pick. I can allow it to grow continually for weeks on end. But the rabbits, or if it would be deer or any other omnivores in my area, will not hesitate to just destroy that potential. All they do is follow their instincts. All they do is see literally what is there in that moment. They don't see what it could be. I see potential and not just actuality. And that's really how we're different. And that's how God is described in this first chapter. So it's important to understand that basic concept to move forward and to understand the biblical God and humanity. Everything we value as humans, we value because we see its potential. And that's why the marshmallow test is so predictive of future success. It's delaying gratification. It's why we intuitively understand why a parent places a baby on board sticker on their car, even when we already know that somebody's in there driving it that's a human. So seeing the potential in that chaos and then seeking to transform that potential into an order that is good, that's the spirit with which God sees and acts upon the world. Now, you have to understand the concept of micro and macrocosm here as well. Here's another quote from the book. God is the creative spirit that called order into being from chaos and possibility, and man and woman, as a microcosm of that spirit, similar or even identical in essence, charged forever, reiterating that creative process. Now, that's the link specified in the idea that we are made in his image. Human beings are a micro example of the nature of that cosmos as a whole. That essence is identical to God's creative process. He sees potential in chaos and creates order, and we can and are charged with doing the same. So, from nothing but the waters of the deep is created heavens and the earth and land to separate the water, and everything else follows. The idea is that people imitate that process when we're called upon to name the animals, giving an order to what has been created. That's everything that we do. That's the best way to understand humanity. Microcosm and macrocosm. The pattern the cosmos follows is the same that we can and should follow. God is that spirit that transforms chaos into order. God is that which recognizes potential and conducts the process to realize that potential into actuality. So, in conclusion, one of the things I was really looking for in reading and understanding the Spirit of God in each story was one succinct spirit or essence that ties all of them together, like one thing or spirit that we can say that is God, so we can have a definition. And all those spirits would be nestled underneath and directly related to that overarching spirit. And I kept thinking, okay, I'll get to the conclusion, and that's what he's going to tell us. But I didn't get that from the book, or specifically the conclusion. But maybe that's not what I should be looking for. But that is what I assumed how it would play out. But I do think that there is, in some sense, something that is portrayed early on that everything else falls underneath, which is why I went into the spirit of the beginning. So that characterization of cosmos, God, and humanity in Genesis is foundational to everything else that comes from it. So if the cosmos is characterized as potential and God is that which creates order from it, and we are created in that image, then that's all you really need to know. All the other lessons come from that foundational realization when you follow that forward and act upon it. Humility comes from understanding your place in that structure. A lack of pride comes from understanding your place in that structure. And then understanding that conscience is the voice of that structure, which comes from within, based on that cosmic structure, comes from that understanding as well. So in some sense, all a person needs to do is read Genesis and then intuit the rational consequences of that framework in order to choose the correct path according to the Bible. Because if someone believes that human beings are creatures who can see potential for good in the chaos of the unknown and are responsible for creating good order from that chaos, and then somebody believes that enough to take action, they are then following all of those subsequent lessons. So the narrative stories in the Bible are then following the logical conclusions of that structure. And that's one of the things that makes Dr. Peterson's explanations of those narratives so helpful. They're not all random stories about good and bad people. They all tie together and are built upon one single framework. So it also makes them easier to believe in the sense that they're true. So regardless of how long a person can live in the belly of a fish, or if Abraham's wife Sarah gave birth as an elderly woman, the lessons or expositions about the nature of humanity and the cosmos in these stories are true. We all know that if we act like that, things will be better as compared if we didn't do that. And we have to understand them from the language of our ancient ancestors who thought very differently about the world, and that takes effort. But to understand what they're telling us first requires that you want to understand what they're telling us. And you only want to understand something if you see value in understanding it. Then you will want to wrestle with it. And I think that's what it takes to understand these stories. But you won't regret it, because the wisdom is, like Dr. Peterson says, unlimited in its depth. So thanks again for sticking around. I really enjoyed the book. If you get a chance, please like and subscribe. And if you have anything about the book that you read or have any questions, please do them in the comments. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. See you later. Mr. Mulatto, out.